Good morning. So today we're going to talk about a woman who you might have heard of, but I learned a lot about her when I was reading. Her name was Florence Nightingale. Have you ever heard of her? Maybe, yeah. She lived about 200 years ago. And when she was about 17, she was from a wealthy family in England, but when she was about 17, she felt like she had a direct call from God to serve people through nursing. Now, at that time, nursing wasn't considered a great career. Well, women didn't generally have careers, but it wasn't really considered a respectable job for a wealthy woman to do. But she chose that. She went to school to become a nurse, and she actually, a few years later, she was pretty young, and she was in charge of a field hospital during the war. Now, at that time, field hospitals were, well, hospitals in general were not clean spaces like they are now. It was before people had understood what germs were, or bacteria, or hand washing, and forget about mask wearing. That wasn't even something people thought of. But when she took over the field hospital, about 40% of the soldiers that came into the hospital died. But then she started sort of this hygiene project where she had all the floors cleaned regularly, and like linens and bandages washed, and encouraged hand washing. And then only 2% of the people who lived in the town. Now, this is about 150 years ago. So that was pretty amazing. Now, after the war, she became a writer. She wrote a lot, and because she was from a wealthy family, really, the press kind of, she's sitting there in the middle of that group. She kind of got a lot of attention and connections, and she started a nursing school, and she encouraged hygiene in sort of regular society. In fact, she was a part of making it the law in England that landowners had to connect the property they owned to the sewage system. Like, that basically means they had to put toilets in, right? And guess what? Then in England, the average age when length of time people lived went up like 20 years. Now, the other thing that I learned was this may kind of look almost, you know what a pie chart is? This is kind of, you know, that it took time for people to figure out they could represent information visually. And Florence Nightingale was one of the people who started that. And this is actually a polar area diagram, which is a little more complicated math than a pie chart, but she started using it in her discussions about health and hygiene in the community. Now, her religious views were pretty unconventional for the time, but we have lots of private diaries of hers and letters she wrote. And she actually felt first, at that time, it was only men who were in charge of the church. And she had no patience for that. And she also believed that God loved all people. At that time, Christians believed, like, some people went to hell. All Christians believed that. And she felt like that if there was a loving God, that God would save all people. Now, Florence was convinced that it was our job to work on behalf of others. So the question of today is, how might an unconventional life like Florence Nightingale's lead to breakthroughs and new ideas? She felt like there would be no heaven for her or anyone else unless we make it.